Welcome to Speaking of Strong Style, where we discuss the news, events, and issues surrounding New Japan Pro Wrestling. I'm Steven Conway. With me, of course, Jeremy Finestone. We're contributors to the Fight Game Media Network. And Jeremy, we have talked over and over again and joked on this show about how it was going to be just a nice, quiet week, and then something huge would happen.
Mm-hmm.
We finally got our nice, quiet week. We were kind of talking about this before we went on the air. There were no events that were on New Japan World. There were a few events that took place. We'll talk about the results of those. Nothing too earth-shattering, I have to say. And then we're looking ahead to a couple of Cork and Hall shows. And it was actually the quiet week. No word on Okada yet. Some we hear AEW, we hear WWE, but nothing yet. So nothing earth-shattering. And here we are, Jeremy, about a week later, and now we can just kind of chat and talk about how things have been going with the company. We're really not it's going to be more of a free flow conversation than usual, isn't it?
Kind of feels like no eyes are on New Japan right now.
Well,
there's news everywhere else. New Japan is incubating until it's time for them to put something interesting out there to the world, either being in the 11th, the 23rd, the 24th, New Japan Cup. But there weren't any shows this week. I went on to New Japan World a couple of times, saw a couple of video packages put up there, saw an Impact match that I decided to catch up on. But the homework was light.
It was. Hi, Colin. Glad you're here. Glad to see you. I mean, of course, the biggest news of the week had little to do with New Japan. The only way you could really tie it to it is that there's a former IWGP champion involved in this whole mess over there in WWE, which we saw with the lawsuit and things, and of course Brock Lesnar part of all that, and apparently was pulled out of the Royal Rumble at the last second as the fallout from this. Like I mentioned, Brock,
Mr. Braun Breaker got every single position spot in that match that Brock Lesnar was supposed to get.
Yeah, and like I said, it's a tenuous tie here between New Japan and anything here, and we are a New Japan show. This is an elephant in the room, and the only thing you can think of is that if what's in this thing is true, then I personally don't feel like Brock Lesnar needs to be around the wrestling business a whole lot at all. And the thing is, you worry as we have seen with Matt Riddle, who doesn't have the best record when it comes to dealing with either women or the legal system in this country, that he's come in, and there's been these talks that, like, well, maybe if Brock can't get into WWE, would he go back to New Japan? I don't see him traveling that much. I'm not really worried about it. The idea of Brock coming back to New Japan, he doesn't seem to want to go on the road like that. He certainly
they can't pay him what he wants.
Certainly
not. It's a money thing for
he is not in this for the love of the game at all. He doesn't particularly care for wrestling that much, and as we've seen, he does as little of it as possible. So I'm not worried about that part. And so this is one time when I think that New Japan, who have brought in some rather unsavory characters in the past, I don't think we're going to have to worry about Brock being brought back to New Japan. I think, like you said, the money's wrong. I don't think he's interested in being on planes that much and leaving home to go across the world. So I think we can just let these guys marinate in their own filth here and just go away. And hopefully we don't see Vince McMahon ever again, although I've been hoping for that for 10 years for various
reasons. I think Vince is gone. I think if we're just going to jump into this real quick, I think Vince is never coming back. This is too deep. The dagger's too deep. When it comes to Brock, knowing that this is Endeavor, knowing that this is TKO, knowing that this is UFC, and if a dollar can be made after enough time has passed, this is a company that has constantly employed John Jones, Conor McGregor, Sean Strickland. You got all these names that are very controversial and have done things very similar to what Brock have been accused of things very similar to what Brock has done, Conor McGregor included. So I think timing-wise, they might try and feel it out, but I don't think we're going to see Brock for a very long time. The plans were potentially him and Gunther and him and Dominic at the Elimination Chamber. None of that's happening. He's gone. He's away for a while, and there are things that he might have to deal with it in his personal life based off of what happened out of there. And, he might not have time for WWE. So, or anywhere else for that matter. But he is still under contract. I don't know how long he can be under contract for. So even the idea of him coming to New Japan, both money and anything else, the whole thing is gross, but I don't think New Japan is going to be in the Venn diagram of this anytime soon.
Yeah, and we're dealing enough with Riddle being here, and we're kind of holding our nose and moving forward with that one. I don't think we need a whole lot more than that. Colin has it right there. Boy, the one thing I hope is that eventually the other people that were involved in all this get run out of the company, but all that is going to be money and not morality. It's always money. It's not morality that drives these things. And it's possible they were going to kick McMahon to the curb anyway, but when Slim Jim threatened to pull out of the Royal Rumble as a title sponsor, that's when dominoes started to fall. It's always money. It's never morality. So unless
I kind of think Netflix had a lot to do with it as well.
Maybe, but unless they put their foot down and just say everybody that is, executive number one or whoever the hell else is in that I read all 67 pages of that thing after the show last week, and it was.
We talked about it privately, and I understood where you were coming from, and it's just it's things that we just never knew Vince would actually do, and it's hard to compartmentalize knowing that the thing that we enjoy has complicity in the pain and suffering of people that had nothing to do with the product, but it's all tied together. And it's just, it's growth. You feel growth for being a part of it. You feel growth for participating in it. You feel growth for putting money in their pocket.
Yeah. And if you want to hear a good discussion of this, by the way, check out Power Bombshells last week. Mel and Sam on the show, more immediate reaction, a little more visceral reaction, I would say, right? We've had a week to kind of think this over, but Sam and Mel have some pretty good thoughts on that too from Power Bombshells. If you want to really deep dive into it, like I said, not really New Japan. It's only New Japan adjacent. So we're not going to spend a whole ton of time on it here.
The best way I'm going to cap it is we are allies. We can be allies and we'll remain allies, but the voices that need to speak out on this are not two white guys covering a New Japan podcast.
Right. Yeah.
About this topic. So we're just going to be like, we understand what happened. We take it very, very seriously. It's upsetting. But how we deal with it is probably going to be something that we have to contend with personally, just like everyone else is.
Yeah, that's well put, and it's just not. It was a very unpleasant week to go through all of that stuff, and geez, I just hope that the bad guys are dealt with appropriately on that, and you always hope that it never. Nothing ever seems to happen to guys like him. So, but maybe this will be a different situation. Meanwhile, back in New Japan, like I said, we don't know anything about Okada's situation any more than he's been talking to both sides as he should. And the decision or no announcement's been made. As far as we know, no decision's been made. So we're just waiting to hear like everybody else.
Companies are in the mix. It seems like he might make his decision anytime now, but we don't have a decision as we're recording. And I don't think we're going to be doing a breaking news tomorrow either.
No, it doesn't seem like it'll. It does seem like it'll be a little while, and so far he is set to still have his remaining matches in New Japan. Nothing's changed on that front. So,
do you have any guesses as to what those last two matches might be?
I still feel like the last one, the final one. I don't on the second to last one. Final one, I'm still feeling like it is a chaos multi-man match where it's an Okada themed thing where they, like similar to what they did with Shinsuke Nakamura when he left his final show at Korakuen Hall. It was, everybody wearing Nakamura t-shirts and all the hugs from his faction mates in the ring, because I don't think they're going to do some kind of angle where they turn on him, or that's not the chaos way. That's the Bullet Club way. No. And so I have a feeling this will be the friendly, tearful farewell from various members of Hantai and Chaos. That's how I kind of read that one. The final one and Sapporo will be, that's my prediction, a big 10-man or something like that with his allies through the years on his side. They'll probably get just do a multi-man match, and send Okada out with a speech and hugs at the end. That's my guess. What do you think?
I think something very similar to that. I'm going to throw a wild, harebrained theory at you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The pay-per-view for the WWE Elimination Chamber is in Perth, and it is, I believe, around that same time.
Okay.
Right? What are the possibilities that Nakamura doesn't go to Perth but comes over to New Japan during that trip and is a surprise for the final match for the Chaos send-off?
The only way that happens is if Okada's signing with WWE.
Or it's an olive branch to get him to sign.
Yeah, something like that. It would be
Like,
part of the. It would be part of the.
Think about
up.
this for just a second. You just think about it for just a second. You're like, oh shit! Like there's something to that, because this is a company, WWE, that strategically incorporated the TNA Women's Champion into their Royal Rumble, and she looked great. There was a deal made, and I am not ruling out like Nakamura being part of some kind of match that is completely inconsequential to the New Japan like competition, but part of the lore would just be one of those moments that is both important to New Japan, important to Nakamura, important to Okada, and it's everything. And I'm just kind of wondering if it's possible, if you think it could happen.
I mean, yeah, maybe. Like I said, if it was part of the thing where they're trying to woo him, or they've made the deal with him, then yes, possible. I suppose it's possible. I'm not kind of looking for it, but I think that's something that could happen. I don't expect it, but it'd be a very pleasant surprise. Dunstan Williams is here, and he has this line. This is true. They seriously should have used the money they're paying for Riddle to re-sign talent. Yep. Agreed there. I don't see the point. I don't see the attraction to Riddle in this situation, and I actually don't see it ending all that well. So I'm with Dunstan on this one, and he's got another idea for Okada. I'm going to get to in a moment. He's probably coming in pretty cheap, yeah. But still,
he is rebuilding a brand, if you would say.
Chaos Gauntlet is his idea. Now this kind of goes back to something that Stardom does when someone leaves the company or retires. Really, they do. Okada's obviously not retiring, but something they did for Himiko when she retired is she had a 1-minute match with just about everybody in the entire company, one after the other, and that was her send-off right there. She was in the ring for about an hour. But if they did something like a Chaos Gauntlet where he had short matches against all of his stablemates right there, that would be an interesting thing. I don't think
maybe like the Suzuki-gun kind of
a little bit, like a little bit of a vibe there for that. That's not a bad idea at all. Actually, just do a little Chaos Gauntlet for Okada so that he does a few minutes.
Everybody in Chaos is going to be involved in that last match. Everyone that's healthy. Who knows if Hiroki Goto is able to show up for that match, but I'm sure if he can put on a pair of wrestling boots and take a bump or two, he's going to be there for it, kind of thing.
Yeah. But we'll have to keep our eyes and ears open. Something tells me that we're not really going to hear what that is until maybe after the Osaka match.
Yeah.
Tanahashi. That's kind of where it's going with that, where maybe after that match, which will be this friendly contest and things where maybe they get on the microphone and just says, how about on the way out, you, me, Ishii, like something like that, team up for the last time, something in that range. So I have a feeling that they might use that Tanahashi match and the aftermath of that Tanahashi match to set up Sapporo.
There's absolutely no reason for them to tell us anything until that Tanahashi match happens. It's like the whole focus of New Japan right now is on the 11th. Like, holy moly, that card is starting to turn into something kind of special. And then we're going into Fantastica Mania. So, I guess maybe let's talk about the build up to the 11th.
Let's look at that. And we have had a few shows this week. Well, half shows. I'll explain. We mentioned it last week. There is a huge speedboat race going on in Hiroshima. It's called Boat Race Miyajima as part of the festivities. And this is more than just the race itself. There's a whole festival around it. New Japan ran 2 small shows with some multi-person tags on them, just in a convention hall in this area as part of the festivities. So these aren't really New Japan shows where people bought tickets to see New Japan wrestling. But on the 27th, here's some of the people they brought in. So it was United Empire, Catch 2-2. So Francesco Akira, TJP, and Kellum Newman teaming with them. They defeated Tiger Mask, Togi Makabe, and Yo. And we had Bushi and Naito defeat Shota Umino and Bolton Oleg. So Tanahashi, Ryusuke Taguchi, and Toru Yano defeated the House of Torture, Dick Togo, Evil, and Show. So what we had there was, Tanahashi, Lij, and that type of thing. So mostly baby faces going over. Nobody was really a heel there. And then on the 28th, you had Umino, Tiger Mask, and Yo. They beat Newman, Akira, and TJP. That's the babyface match. So they just kind of went back and forth there. Bushi and Naito got a win over Taguchi and Makabe. Babyface there. And then in the only real heels on the show, Tanahashi, Bolton Oleg, and Toru Yano defeated the House of Torture, Togo, Evil, and Show. So that was boat race Miyajima. You'd imagine that it's just kind of a more of an exhibition than a big show there, but part of a cultural event in Hiroshima. And of course, Naito, part of it, not only the World Heavyweight Champion, but he has adopted Hiroshima as his second hometown. He regularly throws out the first pitch for the Hiroshima Carp. They wear Lij gear sometimes. He wears Carp gear sometimes. In fact, I found out that the Carp, Jeremy, will even play Naito's music during key moments. That's kind of a rallying
that documentary.
song.
They were talking about that.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool.
Documentary.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So anyway, of course, they brought him in for that, but always good to see New Japan being part of a cultural event. It's considered part of the fabric of Hiroshima.
Is it kind of like the level of tribute to the troops for like WWE or something like that, where it's like, it's there, all the wrestlers are there, but it's not like, it's not a big, it's there for the community and it's there for the outreach and it's there for the promotion. Yeah. That's cool.
I'm sure. Yeah, a lot of meet and greet type of stuff going on right there. Colin says, why not have Okada lose to one of the younger talents like Sujiro Umino in his last match? He really should put the younger talent over. Okada's not really thought of in that same way. He's kind of often above all that. I don't expect that to happen. And, the whole, losing on the way out has faded in a little bit. Now, Nakamura didn't really remember, Nakamura beat AJ Styles. Of course, AJ was leaving too, at Wrestle Kingdom, and then just had the multi-man match. So it's not always something New Japan does with the very top guys.
I would, if you think that there's a chance that you can run this match back in 5 years with some of these guys, I would save it. I would save it and have a couple of them beat Okada, have a couple of them not, and just kind of go that route. There's a 50-50 shot that Okada might be available to wrestle some of these guys over the next few years. Yeah. We don't need to go wild on the Okada needs to put these guys over now. It needs to be organic. It needs to fit the scope of what New Japan is trying to accomplish with the wrestlers and the stories and the promotion, and trying to just make it happen and try and fit it into a moment later on. Just shoehorning it. I don't know. That's not what it feels short-sighted to me.
And it doesn't feel very New Japan-y in that sense. Yeah. They've spent all these years, basically his entire run in New Japan, Okada's been heavily, heavily protected. I'm not disagreeing with your point that it would definitely boost one of those guys. I don't see the current landscape New Japan them doing that, but we'll see what those last two matches are. I mean, if they put him in a match with one of those guys, it does make you wonder at least.
Chances are, if he was sticking around, he's probably going to face off against one of those guys in Sapporo after the New Japan Cup. Just like there would have been plans, but now that he's off the board, you have to consider him off the board.
Yeah, and the putting over people on the way out is a fair point. I'm not even arguing with it so much. It was more of a territory days thing where guys, were the fans didn't always know when you put the young guy over on the way out that the older guy was leaving. There wasn't all this, you couldn't just look all that up on the internet back then. And what I mean by that is right now, Dunstan mentions it. Even if the young talent beat him now, it wouldn't feel like a payoff. Yeah, if they had a match when Yotasuji and Okada and Suji pins Okada and Sapporo, I think everybody in wrestling would know it's just because Okada's leaving. It's not really because Suji suddenly the story wouldn't be suddenly he's on that level. It's just that Okada's leaving, so you know what I mean. It wouldn't have the same oomph as if it was part of the regular storyline, I guess, in that sense.
So they did a thing on New Japan World, and this is just kind of a divergent, but it all makes sense. And it was the United Empire history from 2020 to 2024. And Okada is a huge like villain to the United Empire story. He may be the protagonist in New Japan, but he's the villain for United Empire. And he was used several times over to have matches with Jeff Cobb, with Will Ospreay. He did the job a lot against those guys. He did the job against Jonah back when he was there after the G1. Or during the G1. So there are times where it was appropriate for him to lose. But now that he is leaving, the value of him losing is no longer as high because it feels like lip service rather than part of the plan.
Right. Yeah, and that's why the whole idea of putting people over on the way out, I'm not saying it's antiquated, but it was more of a territory thing. And when there were all these guys, and you didn't have the fans knowing that the guy was leaving. So it would feel like, oh, this is the next big star. This guy just beat this guy that's been dominating things for a while here. Whereas now it's like, well, it's the farewell thing and all. It does have a different vibe to it. It doesn't feel as much like the passing of a torch as, well, we just have to turn the channel and he's still there.
It needed to happen between Jay White and David Finlay, but that's not the way it needs to happen with every single transactional interaction between wrestlers in New Japan. Like there was a need for it to happen a certain way with Jay White, but there's not a need for it to happen that way for Yota Tsuji, for Yuya, for Shota, or even Ren. Like they all have their stories, and Okada is not in the equation.
So New Japan continues on. The tour resumed today. There are house shows leading up to these Korakuen Hall shows. They're just not going to be on New Japan World, and they were in Nagano earlier today. So we had a card there. Again, mostly preview tags, almost all preview tags. A couple of things that were of note. I noticed that Bolton Oleg and Shoma Kato defeated Katsuya Murashima and Togi Makabe. So once again, the quote-unquote young lion team beating a team that has a regular roster member on it in Makabe. Certainly Murashima was the one that did the job, I would imagine, to Bolton. But again, it just shows you how differently they're treating Bolton Oleg in this one. He's two young lions, although Oleg's, I feel like Oleg's getting close to breaking out of that, getting a win over Murashima and Makabe in the opener. We also had
watching Tori last week, just be like, no, I don't want any part of this guy. It's gratifying. They are treating him differently.
Toru Yano and Yoshihashi teamed up with El Desperado. So we had a little Hantai Chaos hybrid there. They beat Sho Kanemaru and Yujiro Takahashi. Moving up there, we had the other House of Torture group, which was Togo, Evil, and Ren Narita. They got a win over Umino, Tomoaki Honma, and Yo. And I don't think I have to give you too many guesses over which one of those guys did the job there. Poor Honma. We had a preview of the tag team title match that's coming up. So Guerrillas of Destiny, that's Phantasmo, Hikuleo, and Jado. They fell to Chase Owens, Kenta, and Taiji Ishimori. So that was probably a Jado job there as they try to keep Owens and Kenta warm for the GOD match. And then we had TMDK, Fujita, Nichols, Haste, and Sabre, all four of them. They beat Tanahashi, Taguchi, Tiger Mask, and Ishii. We also saw the War Dogs. Drilla Maloney's not there, so it was an 8-man tag with Finlay, Kidd, Connors, and Coughlin. They defeated the United Empire, Newman, Akira, TJP, and Hanare. And then we had the 900th meeting between LIJ and Just Five Guys, and this one was won by LIJ. So there you go. That was the show today in Nagano. I believe they're in Saitama tomorrow. Probably.
And we can't watch any of these shows, right?
Yeah,
like they're not on New Japan World. These are all strictly for posterity reporting these.
And here's a question that Dunstan has that I want to take an offshoot of this question. He says, do you think it's time they let Bolton go on excursion? I'm going to twist that question. Does Bolton go on an excursion, Jeremy?
I don't think so.
I don't either. It doesn't feel like it, does it?
Oh, well, I've been on this one for a long time, and it's going right into Bullet Club. Bullet Club's not sending their guys to excursion. they're throwing him in the deep end, and they're getting brutal with Connors and Kidd and Maloney. I just like the Bullet and Bullet Club. It's right there. I just don't see him going anywhere. I see him just, they're going to treat him differently. It's just, that's it. They're going to treat him differently.
Let's suppose what we talked about last week, that maybe some new factions come out of this with Okada leaving, and maybe Chaos and Hantai, maybe there's a shuffling. Remember how we talked about there might be a shuffling of the deck right there because it doesn't really feel like there's a leader of Chaos at this point. We suggested things like Shota Umino or Shingo Takagi breaking off and starting their own deal with whatever pieces are left of Chaos and all that. And again, we no inside information. This is just supposing. But
on our bullshit.
If you didn't do the Bullet Club thing with Oleg, boy, he would be like the first round draft pick of either Takagi or Umino if they did that, right? Wouldn't that be something where if someone goes to Bishamon and says, your leader's gone, Chaos isn't anymore, why don't you guys roll with me? And hey, let's take the big guy with us and see if he's interested. Now you've got kind of a faction going. It's something that they could do with him. I'm saying if they reshuffle the deck, if they use this excuse with Okada leaving to reshuffle that deck, he could be a key player in that. If you just decide to promote him up to the main roster and say, no longer a young lion, he's with this group, similar to what they did with TMDK and Fujita, because really, Fujita never really went on excursion. He made a couple of shots in Australia, but the vast majority of his matches
excursion is with TMDK. They're just shadowing those guys.
Yeah, but he never really left Japan. He went over to Australia for a little bit, but Robbie Eagles has been in Australia more than Fujita has, and I mean, which makes sense where Robbie's from. But I'm just saying, it wasn't much of an excursion. More of his matches have been in Japan than over anywhere else.
You are not wrong. Now.
Thank you.
If I don't have anything to add to that, but I'm going to say you're not wrong, and then I was going to try and pivot back to say, now if he does end up going to excursion, where would you send him?
Oh goodness! I mean, that's just the thing. We know that Loibe and Nakashima went over to the UK, so so you wouldn't think that they would send a third guy over there. He doesn't really fit Mexico.
Not at all.
Yeah, he doesn't really fit the Oceania thing. I don't see him going over there and working with Fale's guys, what's left of them. By the way, Jack Bonza ain't coming back for a little while. I don't know if you saw the thing. He got drunk and smashed into a cop car and then took off. So he's got some legal issues to deal with.
There's a maturity thing that they're going to have to work
through. Yeah. So I wouldn't worry about Bonza for a minute, but he doesn't really feel like an Oceania guy either. That's why I'm just like, I can't figure out where he would go, so I don't think he's going.
You think maybe they send him to TNA?
That might. I mean, it's the only choice of what I don't think he goes to Ring of Honor. So, and they don't really do that the same way anymore anyway, now that Ring of Honor's with AEW. So that would be the only thing I could really think of, is if he goes over to TNA, which might not be a terrible idea. TNA is a lot better than it used to be. They're on a bit of a hot streak at the moment. It's where I'm guessing Tama Tonga ultimately ends up, either that or MLW.
But it's also like you're not going to have him do anything more than what Yuya Uemura did, which is just look good in matches. He's not going to win any singles titles over there. It's not like they're gonna put anything other than just make sure he's getting his reps. So is that good for him to have the exposure over here? It's just this big beefy guy that people are like, oh, this is the guy I heard of. Oh, he's just doing these lower level matches in TNA right now, and they're not going to put the rocket on him there because that's not how it works.
Yeah, I agree with you.
It's like the more I talk it through with you, I'm just leaning toward just keep him in house.
And they have treated him differently from the very beginning. He's done very few jobs. He's done some, but he's done very few jobs overall. He's beaten the other young lions anytime they've gotten the opportunity. He hasn't pinned a main roster guy yet that I can think of. The way Fujita pinned. No, who was it? Was it Fujita that pinned Ghetto or something like that? But
I think so.
Yeah, but
I'm getting really close to calling Bolton Boltista.
But it's one of these things that they've treated him differently. They haven't beaten him like they have. They've had him going over in places where young lions don't usually go over. I feel like that different treatment. They see something very special in him, and I think that's going to continue over when it comes to his excursion. So my guess is Dustin, I don't think he's going on one. I agree with Jeremy. I think they just keep him in town.
Yep, that's kind of where I'm at on that one.
All right.
Good talk.
Yeah. So should we preview? And if you get, like I said, it's more of a free form thing. If any of folks that are
today, guys.
that are watching live, if you have a question like that, feel free to kick it in. We are going to preview the 2 shows at Corrigan Hall. However, that's our next order of business. But I just want to remind everybody, Power Bombshells, all of us here, hit the like and subscribe buttons on this. If you're listening on a podcast, if you could rate us, leave us a review, all that stuff helps people find the show. Power Bombshells is on at 1 p.m. Eastern on Sunday, and that's always a terrific show. We've got the Boom. Jeremy, tell them about what else you can find with Fight Game Media. We'll do the housekeeping, then we'll get into Corrigan.
Yeah, first off, thank you for beginning the plug of pouring ourselves out to the audience and letting us know that you can hear us on both audio and video. We have links through Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Just Google Speaking for Strong Style on anywhere, and you'll be able to find links for us here, there, anywhere. We're on the Fight Game Media YouTube channel. You can see if you want to advocate for more Fight Game Media content, hit that like and subscribe. Just like Steven Conway said, we have the Dynamite Show. We have the Boom. We have In the Clinch. We have the Wrap. We have the Double G Show. We have Observe This. We have number of content shows. The 5-Star Joshi Show comes out every day of the week except Sunday. We are doing live recaps of WWE PLEs and AEW pay-per-views. And when we deem it necessary on the shows, we will do our own live shows for the New Japan show, including the day after the Super Bowl. We're probably going to talk about February 11th because as we will pull up the graphics, holy moly, it looks like a big show. So keep an eye out for that Monday blast of New Japan content from us here. And I think I've covered most of the basics there. Steven Conway, I'm going to hand it right back over to you.
Okay. And Dunston's still advocating for him going on an excursion. He thinks he and Fujita could still use an excursion to find their characters and styles. With that in mind, Dunston, honest question. We've kicked around some of the ideas, some of the places he could go. Where do you feel that Bolton would have his best development? I'm curious to hear what you think on that one. He really doesn't feel like a luchador at all. So CMLL, I don't think works. Might work for Fujita if they wanted to send him that way. If they wanted to send him back to Oceania, that would be fine. They don't do a ton of shows. You know, that Tamashi is not a regular circuit. For Oleg or for Fujita?
What about MLW?
Yeah, Dunston, where do you think? What do you or anybody back there? Like if let's say Oleg is going to go on excursion, where do you think would be the best fit for him? And let's do the same thing for Fujita too. Let's do some supposing. We already know that Loibe and Nakashima are headed for England, so
they're in Rev Pro, right?
Yeah, they're going to be in Rev Pro. That would be a good spot for them. There's a lot of good workers over there that they can learn from. That's a good spot for those two, I think.
Dark Horse Canada. I'm going to go with MLW for Bolton Oleg. Nobody watches that show.
have they sent people on excursion to MLW?
No, but Jacob Fatu was the arrangement for Battle in the Valley, and he was from MLW. So things are underway since Court Bauer has gotten some money from the WWE.
Dunston mentioned that Osaka show sold out. Yeah, they were down to bits and pieces last week. They were really down to just the bare nubbins as far as tickets go. And
it was like a new beginning for New Japan.
Oh, look at you. We're going to take a look at some of the past of that new beginning things in the later on the show. So the next time we get to tune in on NJPW World, we'll be back at the hallowed halls of Corrigan Hall, and that'll be Sunday, February 4th. And let's take a look at that card. So the theme of the first one there, the Sunday show, we have Sunday and Monday because I believe it's a bank holiday in Japan, so most people are off Monday. They're running it. It is United Empire against the War Dogs is pretty much the theme of that show. So the main event being the junior tag team title match between Catch 2-2 and the War Dogs being Drilla Maloney and Clark Connors. It's an interesting matchup here, Jeremy, just because I honestly feel like this one could go either way. They've had Connors and Maloney as part of the picture before. Catch 2-2. There's talk of TJP and interviews going up to heavyweight. So is Catch 2-2 really going to be a thing going forward? To me, this one's actually a coin flip. You could make a case either way. Both of these teams are very good. I expect this match to be excellent. So I feel like we're winners either way. And the junior titles are the ones that can bounce around a lot. You know, there's a lot of title changes, and a one and done title reign is not unheard of at all. So flip a coin on this one. Which way are you leaning?
I'm going to lean towards Catch 2-2, but I think it could go either way, and no matter what happens, the War Dogs and Bullet Club by the end of next week are going to be positioned as very, very powerful in New Japan.
Okay. Is that where you're leaning on this one?
I'm going to lean towards Catch 2-2. I just, even if Catch 2-2 wins, I don't expect the War Dogs to take it lying down. It's just kind of one of those, everybody's gonna be look brutal by the end of this match.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. And Dunstan says he feels like it would make sense. Storyline wise, it would make sense to have the War Dogs win, but only if they re-sign new contracts.
I thought about that.
It's the underlying thing to everything now, isn't it? It's the underlying factor for all of it. But yeah.
But just knowing that we have this match following up, and then the one after that, it could be that some of those friends of the United Empire are left lying, and even if they win, they lose, kind of thing.
So we will have Callum Newman against David Finlay. Got to think Newman's buzzard meat in that one. Jeff Cobb against Alex Coughlin. Feel like Cobb's going to win that one, which leaves us down. Leaves the series down to Henare against Gabe Kidd, which has a potential to be the show stealer, really, with the way these guys like to hit one another. I think that all of the preview stuff with the War Dogs and United Empire has been really good. But these guys have real chemistry, and I'm not talking about just Henare and Gabe. I mean, just the units just seem to work really well together. I think it's going to be a pretty good night of wrestling.
I'm going to call this the strong style match of the evening.
Yeah, this could be really good. This low-key could be really exciting.
A lot of people love to talk up Gabe Kidd after these matches, and Aaron Henare can I watched the United Empire thing, and there was Aaron Henare references through half of it, and so I have to retrain myself to just call him Henare. Yeah, he has made quite a transformation over 4 years.
It was Toa Henare for a long time, too. Yeah. So the full card, by the way, we mentioned those are the key matches right there. And before that, though, we have the 901st meeting between LIJ and Just Five Guys. They also have a Chaos Hantai group. That's Yo, Taguchi, Ishii, and Tanahashi facing TMDK. We have Honma, Phantasmo, and Hikuleo against Ishimori, Owens, and Kenta. So, again, that's just going to be the Bullet Club team getting wins on the champs until they meet in that title match. And then the first match is an all-skate here. We've got another 10-man tag, and that's going to be House of Torture against Yoshihashi, Makabe, Desperado, Umino, and Bolton Oleg. So, of that group there, it feels like they're either going to feels like they're going to beat Makabe before they beat Bolton Oleg in that one. That's going to tell a tale, isn't it? Because
yes, it is.
If you have four main roster guys and Bolton Oleg, and one of the main roster guys takes the fall in that one, because that'll tell us all we need to know. Or if that team wins, again,
it will confirm what we already knew, not tell us what we need to know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it'll be a good indication there where they're heading with him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we got some more comments to jump onto before we hit the net tonight.
Okay, let me get back to that here. I'm just kind of clicking around, zooming around. All right. There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, and Gabe versus Henare will steal the show. And Dunstan also had his recommendations for excursions, since we just talked about Bolton Oleg. He said that CMLL would be a fit for Fujita. Yeah, I think that would be a good place to send him. He would certainly be in with some band. CMLL is really good right now. There's some really talented dudes in CMLL. It would be fun to see him in with them. And just in learning lucha. Yeah, well, I mean, it's worked out for Desperado and Hiromu, who are only two of the best on planet Earth. And then Bolton could benefit from working in TNA, he feels. Maybe. I wouldn't mind seeing Bolton Oleg against Moose someday once Oleg gets a few miles on him there. He's a little green for that yet right now, but down the road, wouldn't mind seeing that match.
Full confession: the appearance of Hechicero and Volador and all of them doing their little visit to AEW prior to Fantastica Mania was what made me think about Nakamura potentially showing up in New Japan on the 23rd, 24th. Just, a little side trip before your bigger trip later on.
Yeah.
Just kind of, do a little stop off on the way. It seems like it's easier and easier in wrestling to make that happen.
I like that. I would love to have a world where things like that could happen again. And it wasn't really Vince McMahon's WWF in the 80s was the one that put up isolating walls, really. I mean, people did move around. As far as guest shots in Japan, New Japan and All Japan, there was a little too much antipathy between Baba and Inoki to do that too often. If you went to one, you left. It wasn't. If New Japan didn't loan guys to All Japan and vice versa, that was a battle. So a new era, definitely. And of course, New Japan's very open to working with other promotions. So that whole isolationism, I would love it if it became a thing of the past and people started working together more.
So that's why I thought about it. I was like, that's the MLL thing. Just, they're stopping right off before their bigger week-long tour. And I'm like, would that happen?
I'm still not prepared for Triple H to do anything out of the goodness of his own heart. And what I mean by that is he's working for a major conglomerate and corporation here. He's got to serve those masters. So he is not the all-powerful boss that Vince was. So I think there would have to be something like, okay, this is going to help us get Okada in order to make something like that happen.
Yeah, there's this sense that, AEW is going to pay him more money, but WWE is going to have the prestige and the prestige and the whole deal. If you flex that WWE muscle before he even leaves and makes the goodbye even better, that's the kind of, gesture that they're trying to show him. Like, we are WWE. We can make these things happen. It is not the company that it used to be a year ago. And I'm not necessarily sure we need to consider it the same company that it was a year ago. Like, I'm really taking the Jordan Grace TNA champion appearance very, very seriously.
But I mean, I take it seriously in that they want to get Jordan Grace.
No, she's under contract with TNA. Like, it was simply an arrangement between the two. But she looked better than half the roster.
Yes, she did. But how long is she under contract to TNA?
I think it's another year.
Well, that's not too long.
They belted her and they put the title on her when all the other people did sign.
I think they brought her in because they want to bring her in. I think that's. I mean, that if you get Naomi back, which they did, she's the first round draft pick after that, right?
Of course, yes. I think the arrangement with her was actually a little bit different, and that's why it's like, But it also fits into the Okada argument. It's like the courtship of these talents that are good, that are not working for WWE, and Triple H is thinking outside, or Paul Levesque, whatever you want to call it, is thinking outside the box. And we have to be prepared for the idea that he is going to do outside the box things to get people that wouldn't normally consider WWE.
Yeah, I mean, I when I looked at the Jordan Grace thing, I thought, oh, okay, they're going to sign Jordan when her contract's up. But Colin says, did I hear what folks were saying about Julia and AEW, that the reason they won't sign her is because when she faced Willow Nightingale, she worked stiff and didn't check on her afterwards? I'm skeptical of that one, Colin. The whole thing with Julia, I think WWE probably offered her a little bit more money. He also says Emmy and Cheetah don't like her because of the whole ice ribbon thing. There was a bit of there were bad feelings the way she left Ice Ribbon and went to Stardom, and so there might be a little bit of that. But I think if Tony wanted her, he'd have just gotten her. It's just a matter of, because she works. I mean, I know you know this, Colin, and the folks at home, Julia works stiff. That's one of the reasons she's one of the biggest stars out there. I don't know that would be so much of a factor there. So I don't really think that they just said, oh, she hits too hard, therefore we're not going to bring her in. I'm skeptical of that one. This is a company that lets their roster dive into barbed wire and thumbtacks, male, female, or anything else. I don't see somebody hitting somebody hard to be a real problem in AEW. I'm not saying they're reckless. The referees are, but I'm not saying they're reckless, but it's just a matter of, I doubt that was the reason. I just think WWE probably gave her a better deal.
Yeah, I don't know if we see Julia in WWE anytime soon, but I do think we'll probably see her by the end of the year. I think people are looking for reasons to explain why Julia is not going to AEW, because they see her as someone that AEW could use because of the lack of talent currently being utilized properly in the division. With that being said, I think there's a narrative that people want to make it fit why she's not going there, whether that's actually the truth. I think she's going to be done with her contracted dates within the next 60 days. We're not going to know for a while what's going to go on with her, but after that, I think she's probably heading, exactly where we think she's going.
The other thing about that, the AEW women's division, we're going by actions and not words here. Okay. I don't think AEW cares so much about women being great wrestlers. They want personalities. And here's what I mean by that. Toni Storm is an elite level worker. She is great and can have fantastic matches. Toni Storm didn't get the full blown push until she came up with this over the top wacky character. Timeless Toni Storm. It's hitting on all the cylinders. People are getting a kick out of it, but it's working. You can't say it's not working, and it's certainly being pushed. Now, not the only other, and Jamie Hayter's really good also. Mariah May's excellent, but the other woman who is absolutely elite level is Athena, who does not have an over the top wacky character, and you have to get that Ring of Honor club that nobody has in order to watch her. Because she doesn't appear on AEW hardly at all, even though she's been one of the best female workers out there. So what do Tony's actions tell us that she wants? Well, they had Sheeta, who's pretty good, not elite level. They've had other people who are pretty good workers. And it was Britt Baker, who's not that good of a worker, but she had a character and she could talk. And she had her little wacky skits with Rebel and calling Ariba and Tony, the Shivani thing. I think that's what Tony wants from the women's division. I don't think he's looking for great matches because he has women capable of doing it, but he pushes the ones that do the wacky stuff, including one who is elite level, who he wasn't pushing until she did the wacky stuff. His actions are speaking louder than his words on that for me.
Yeah, if chasing ratings, 100%. I would argue that Mariah May hasn't actually looked as good as her potential would deem up to this point. She's had a lot of matches where her opponents have looked better than her, and I hope that trend changes. I don't know. We're talking about the women's division over in AEW and all these things. So, you've got timeless Toni Storm. It is 100% a character. You have Athena, who is trying to get a match with Julia before we get going. It appears confirmed that Mercedes Moné is, in fact, going to AEW. So she is going to be in the radar. And once she shows up, it's not going to be Mercedes Moné's women's division segment. It's going to be the Moné segment. And then there's going to be a women's division segment.
I think that's very true. Yeah.
Like the room will be shoehorned in for her. And if the title is in the picture at the time, great. I would honestly say throw the Julia versus Moné match on a Dynamite if you can't get it done at Windy City, or throw Athena versus Julia and then save Athena versus, Mercedes Moné for down the line. You have these caliber matches to set up these big anticipated face-offs. But you don't have enough to sustain it through even one or two segments throughout a show for 5 segments a week. It's not deep enough. Like the division is not deep enough and not sustainable. And the things that they are doing are lower mid-card men's skits, not upper mid card. These are women who have wrestled big matches in the past and are now relegated to doing, romance backstage stuff that has played out for 4 weeks.
And, the other thing I'm not sure Julia shows up in AEW at all on that too much. It's one of those things where she's leaving Stardom in the next couple of months. Maybe she's going to be a freelancer for a little while. Here's the word on Julia, that she is going to take some time where she is going to be freelance and work whatever dates she wants while she concentrates on learning English. She feels like that's going to be a big deal. So the word we have is that she is going to really focus on going hardcore on learning the language. She speaks Italian and Japanese, but she really wants to get into English there before she comes over. If she's not going to AEW, there's only one reason to learn English intensely. So that would be where she's headed. So with that in mind, if she is headed there, I don't know if she even works for AEW at any point there. So, but I mean, I think she could still make shots for Stardom as the year goes on, perhaps. But I mean, she could. She's freelance. I'm not saying she can't, but it's, I think I might lower the odds a bit.
If you had the opportunity to, would you make the first belt that Mercedes Moné had on AEW the IWGP title, and then have her chasing the other one? Because they need to get that belt off of Julia, right? Yeah. And she's not going to be on the Windy City show. So I'm asking, hypothetically, would you put that title on her and have her hold that title? And she was never going to be losing all these matches, going into it. But do you just shotgun a title onto her first night, do it in Boston, have her win a title, and then she's constantly winning, and then down the line it becomes like she's a 2-belt champ with the AEW title as well, and then eventually she drops the IWGP when they have a plan for that?
I mean, I think you just put Mercedes to the moon, and the thing with her, and so you could put the belt on her, but she is going to be such a star, she doesn't really need the belt to even.
That's what I was wondering. If it bring her down.
Keep in mind, in the United States, she's a bigger star than Okada is in the United States. And so if she comes in there, you can wait a while. You can choose to put the belt on her immediately. You can just launch her like they did with Hulk Hogan. Here you go. Here's the new kingpin, queen pin in this case. Here's your new champion. There it is. She's carrying the entire division. That's possible. You could do that, but you don't have to do that, because her match will be a bigger deal than the women's world title match, no matter what. So you can keep a title match over here and use that to get this rivalry over, and have the Moné match as a bigger deal, whoever it's with. So you don't have to merge those two things into one quite yet, although you certainly could. I mean, but you don't need to. You don't need to, because coming in, I guarantee you, in the United States, bigger star than Okada is. I mean, not to us. And I love Mercedes. I think she's fantastic. And Okada is, I think one of the best of all time. But as far as that crowd at AEW, when Mercedes comes out, that place is going to explode. If you all
book
2,000 of them.
Garden in Boston and say it's going to be Mercedes first night there, do they sell out?
I don't know about sell out, but it'll sure do better than the $2 or $3 grand they're putting in seats now. Hell of a lot better than that.
Yeah.
Hell of a lot
better.
It's like
if you were going to go big and say we have a star, and you do not sell out when you announce that star in their hometown, that is a risk.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why I'm like, how big do you go? Do you hedge? Do you put a belt on her to say, like, hey, we're serious about this, but it's not the belt, and then begin that journey? Or just what route do you go? Because the women's division and the opportunity of Julia to help elevate it, if briefly, is something that I would strongly consider, because even if she's showing up, there is a kind of, a Venn diagram in which it's not completely out of the question for her to show up on Ring of Honor, or to do Greensboro at Revolution, or to do a random match in Boston for on TV, in the middle of March. All of these things are completely possible.
And none of these people, by the way, are the IWGP Women's Champion. That's Mayu Iwatani. So Julia
I had the wrong title.
No, you're okay. She has the NJPW Strong title. That's Julia's title. But Iwatani. So here's what I'm hoping, fingers crossed, which is probably not going to happen, is that they just have Iwatani and Julia faced off and Sheena becomes a double champion, or they just merge those two belts, which don't need to both exist.
Oh, no, anyway, it'll just be another trend of somebody carrying around multiple belts, because that's the latest hot thing.
Yeah, that is the latest hot thing. Yeah, you're right about that. All right, so we go into the 5th. We haven't even talked about the Monday show yet.
No. We took a brief pause in the action.
To cover the women's division, that's fine. So on NJPW World, Monday, February 5th, Cork and Hall, we have Faction Warfare Gauntlet.
902.
Yes, number 902. Just 5 guys against LIJ. So that's a gauntlet match there. And that's really the main point of that show. That's
okay. We have to explain this match, though. This match is weird.
Go ahead.
Have you seen this? The matchup begins as a 10-minute one-fall single match.
Mm-hmm.
The winner of the one-on-one match will remain in the match.
Right.
Okay? And then the next person on the opposing team will enter. It's a gauntlet match between 2 teams, and they're going to manufacture it so that they are going to end up with one-on-one at the very end. Do you think that they're starting with Taka and Bushi or starting with Sonata and Naito?
Oh God, I don't know. I don't think either one. I have a feeling it might start with Uemura and Tsuji or something, or Taichi and Shingo, some combination like that. I think they'll probably put. Well, I don't know. I don't know now. I feel like they will. I don't think they'll start with Taka and Bushi, but maybe they will. I don't know. I feel like
this over the.
I feel like that's too obvious. I think they'll probably put in somebody like Taichi or someone in the middle. I don't think it'll start with Naito and Sonata, because I think they aren't gonna want those guys in the ring all that long, and they won't want those guys to lose.
No.
So that's gonna be tricky.
There's no time limit, it doesn't look like. So there's no time limit, so there has to be a winner. Number 1. Yeah. But number 2, I am 1,000% predicting that Doki's going to get another pin on Hiromu.
Yeah, I think so too. And the other thing is, if there has to be a winner, I'm betting that Sonata beats Naito in the very end, just because they're going to want to set up that title match. Everyone is kind of figuring that Naito is going to beat him and move on, right? I think so. And I think they want to convince us that he's under more of a threat than that. So my guess is that we'll see Sonata get a pin, whether it's the end of the match or not. I think Naito will be eliminated by Sonata in there.
Yeah. This is going to be a fun match.
No.
It'll be a fun match. It'll be completely inconsequential who pins who, because it's just setting up the singles matches in 2 weeks kind of thing. So whoever has the singles matches with each other, I feel like is going to play directly into the storyline of who pins who.
Oh yeah.
In these gauntlet things. It's all related.
We have another United Empire War Dogs match in there. That's a 10-man. Yeah, 10-man. Ton of people on these cards. Good Lord. They're getting their money's worth out of all these contracts here where you're not paying by appearance. They're getting everybody on these things. An 8-man tag with Hantai and Chaos against TMDK. There's the 10-man tag. Geez, another 10-man tag with Oleg with Yo, Honma, Desperado, and Umino against House of Torture. We'll have
Evil, Sho, Ren, Yujiro, and Yoshinobu.
And then we've got Ishimori, Owens, and Kenta again against Phantasmo, Hikuleo, and Jado again. And then Murashima against Great Okan. Rest in peace, Katsuya. So there you go. That's the lineup for.
There are no stipulations
Monday
for that match. It's just a title defense for Great Okan.
Oh, that's not a. I don't think that's a King of Pro Wrestling title match.
Okay, so it says here, finally in possession for a singles New Japan Championship, Okan has vowed to fight and defend his title every night in every town across the country. Before that plan might be enacted, he will grant an opportunity to young Murashima, who will be looking to gain valuable experience. Read the full thing.
There you go. So
Are we off to the 11th now?
Well, we'll take a look at the 11th now. All right. We'll move on to Osaka. So this is the big show here. Sold out, as it's been mentioned here. Dunstan filled us in on that. We knew that they were down to like bits and bobs as far as tickets go. But, of course, Okada, Tanahashi. there you go. That's all you need to know from Edion Arena right there. Also on that one, the IWGP Tag Team titles. That's the second match in this series with Chase Owens and Kenta challenging Hikuleo and El Phantasmo, the double tag champs. We will also see the Shut Up and Take My Money match, which is Zack Sabre Jr. and Bryan Danielson. Bryan Danielson, of course, just beat Yuji Nagata in a really good match on Collision as part of his get back at Zach for wrestling Tiger Mask, I guess. That's kind of a thin story, but that's kind of what they did there. They had Danielson wrestle Nagata to prepare for Zach. And steel cage match, United Empire against War Dogs in Will Ospreay's farewell to New Japan. And in the prelims, just 5 guys against LIJ for the 903rd time. House of Torture against Tiger Mask, Hanma, Desperado, and Umino. Bishamon versus Callum Newman and Great Khan. And then Yo and Yano against Bolton and Taguchi. It'll be interesting to see who loses in that one also. Taguchi seems to be the most likely to me, but we'll find out.
Yeah. So we'll have the shows to review for the 4th and the 5th for next week, and then we will have a live show recap on the 12th. And then we'll have another show on the 15th?
Yeah, we'll be back on that Thursday as well. Yeah. There'll be other things to talk about by then.
Hopefully.
Well, we'll have the beginning of Fantastica Mania.
Yes.
That is the 12th through the 19th. And so we'll be seeing that. And then, of course, that all leads up to February 23rd and 24th. That's a Friday and Saturday in Sapporo. And on the 23rd, the never open weight title, Evil versus Shoto Mino, Desperado against Sho in a singles match, Tanahashi versus Matt Riddle for the TV title, and the global title, Nick Nemeth, of course, former Dolph Ziggler against David Finlay in the first global title defense. The 24th, we'll have all those singles matches with LIJ against just 5 guys, ending, of course, with the IWGP World Heavyweight title on the line, Tetsuya Naito against Sanada. Let's see what else is on that one. That's the main point.
What if Sanada actually beat Naito that night?
I will swallow my tongue. I really will. I would be absolutely astonished. And
of course, we haven't actually talked about what it could mean if after all of that Sanada just wins the belt again.
And of course there is also a big Stardom show, the anniversary show, their 13th anniversary show coming up this weekend, Colin. The jury's out on whether or not I'll be able to watch that one live and order it. Depends on what's going on that day. I might have a commitment that I have to do right there. So I want to watch the show. It's just a question if I'm going to be able to order it and watch it in the same day. And if I can't, I might as well just wait for it to come out on Stardom World a couple days later. But we'll see how it goes. Dunson says if Sonata wins, we're doomed. Yeah, kind of, pretty much. I don't anticipate that, though. I really feel like this is going to be a Naito win there. So, yeah. Coming up, that's it. And we all, Fantastica Mania is always a good time. That's the 12th through the 19th, and we'll be covering that also. So,
you want to hear a funny story? It has nothing to do with wrestling, but it just made me. I thought everyone would find it funny since we're talking about not doing a show on the Super Bowl. My wife's birthday was during the NFC and the AFC championship games, and I am a 49ers fan. But I remember last year where the NFC championship, Brock Purdy tore his ACL, and the game was miserable. And so I decided, you know what? I'm not going to watch this game. I'm going to go see Amy Poehler and Tina Fey do their stand-up routine for my wife's birthday.
How was that?
It was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Fred Armisen did like a accent thing around the world, and they did a weekend update thing. It was great.
Good.
Halfway through the show, some dude yells, "Niners won!" And when I started the show, they were losing 21-7. And it was one of those things where I was just like, if I don't want to be watching this in misery when it happens. And then they won, and then a bunch of people groaned because they were doing question and answer for the show. And somebody wrote in for the question and answer segment, what do you do if you're the husband and you bought your wife tickets to this show, not possibly comprehending that the NFC Championship game would be happening with the Niners in the Bay Area at the exact same time? And my wife looks at me and it's like, did you write that? I'm like, I swear to God, I didn't.
Wasn't me.
But that's why we're not doing a show on the 11th and we're doing it on the 12th, because the Niners are in the Super Bowl. Thanks.
Since we have time, can I do an adjacent story to that?
Absolutely.
when I was very early in my relationship with my current partner, she and I wanted to see The Lion King. The Lion King musical was touring, so the big Lion King musical, the Disney Lion King thing. I go and I look online, and tickets are hard to come by. It's really difficult. Except there's one night when I could actually get a pretty decent seat, and I was like, "Oh yeah!" I grab them. It was the only place where I could get a pretty good shot at this without being way back in the rafters or anything like that. I get these 2 seats, all excited. I tell her, she's excited. We're thrilled. Holidays go through. We pass through New Year's. It comes up. I look at the ticket and I realize that the reason there were still tickets available, it's Super Bowl Sunday. So the whole time, the biggest game of the year is going on, and I was sitting there at the Lion King right there. I have to say, it ended up working out because, first of all, the Lion King's a fantastic show. Yes. That's a really good musical. The other thing is, it was the year, I don't know if you remember this, Jeremy, they had the weird power outage in the stadium that year, and the game was delayed about 45 minutes.
Love it.
I made it home in time to see the end. So that worked out anyway. But it's another one where you just like, you got to check those dates, folks, if you're going to be doing
what I call that?
What's up?
A true instance of Hakuna Matata.
Yeah.
No worries.
I always love Hakuna Matata. I didn't make this up. This was like a comedian, or it was a tweet or something like that, where someone just said, gee, kid, what's the matter? Well, let's see. My father was murdered in front of me. I was run out from my homeland, and I'm not allowed to ever see anybody who ever loved me again. And they just said, well, have you tried not giving a shit?
Yeah, it probably didn't work out for him.
Have you just tried not giving a shit?
Have you just tried?
And I guess we don't either. So, okay. Now, I have, is there anything? Oh, yes. Dunstan had a question we want to get into. He said for later on, but with gaijins becoming more expensive for the company, should Tanahashi, President Tanahashi does, limit the amount of gaijins by importance? Thoughts on that, Jeremy?
No, not really. The use of gaijins in New Japan is incredibly important towards the advancement of the rest of their talent. And there are ways to use them and utilize them, and making your budget work. And that is a part of every wrestling promotion, is finding the talent that is valuable and you can get the best bang for your buck. And there are a lot of guys there that, they are starting to get more expensive. That is absolutely true. But, the company isn't broke. They just can't afford, the top guys anymore. They can't afford to pay main event money to the guys that can be main event elsewhere and willing to pay it. The scale gets a lot different when it's down at the bottom of that pay scale rather than at the top. And I think the guys that we're thinking of are more at the bottom of that pay scale.
Yeah, and the key for all of Japanese wrestling, which has always had a gaijin element, has been just to find the right guys for the right price. And when times are rough in Japan, what they've done is gone out and find maybe some indie guys. They've always been good at spotting talent in there. Like Will Ospreay wasn't Will Ospreay when they brought him in. And back then, and neither was Zack Sabre Jr. from it. They knew they were talented, but they weren't stars in the U.S. They didn't have to sign them away from anybody, and there are people coming up in Rev Pro. There are people in MLW that are talented, that they maybe, not that AEW and WWE blow them off and are uninterested, but you can't bring everybody in all the time, and so you might be able to grab some of these guys. Now, the question, of course, that is nerve-wracking is, until the economy of Japan improves, is it a system where they're basically a farm team for if someone does get over big, are they just going to get swiped up? Well, that's always a risk you got to take. But
I don't look at it like that. I look at it as New Japan is a rep builder. You go in there to build your name, to build your rep, to get your opportunity. New Japan, unfortunately, is never the end goal for the people traveling to Japan and are not native to
them. That's true too.
That's the arrangement. It's like you use them for the period of time, you get the maximized value out of it. Some of these guys are always going to be welcome back because of the way that they have developed the combative / relationships with the fans and the audience and the promotion. But this is it. This is how it works. There's going to come a time where Moxley isn't going to be around in New Japan every other month. You know, in 2 or 3 years, this whole arrangement that we have is just going to be done. It could keep happening because he loves doing it. But it's like every one of these guys, there is a shelf life. There is a window that it happens, and there is a point in which it's like, cool, it's not happening anymore. And we have to just be thankful for the time that we had.
It's important to note that every single leader of Bullet Club has eventually been signed away by an American company. Oh. Every single one. And that's going to keep happening. It's always been a part of it. And in the olden days, the Japanese wrestlers would run off the foreign heels. They would just run them off. They would beat them and they would send them back and they'd get new ones. They would just bring in different guys. The life cycle lasting years, plural, is basically a 21st century thing that really wasn't happening a whole lot before, where you would get guys that would come for years and years. I mean, Stan Hansen and All Japan and all that, but Hulk Hogan for years until he didn't anymore. There were always exceptions to that, but a lot of it was guys cycling in and out, where they would run roughshod for a while, but then lose to the top Japanese guy, and they would go away for 6 months. You wouldn't see him, maybe even for a year, or they would come back for the tag team tournament, and then that type of thing. So this is all just part of the circle of life, if we want to bring it back to the Lion King in Japanese wrestling.
Think about how the people all left this past month. You had Tama Tonga, who's like, hey, listen, I've been doing this for 14 years. I got to get back to my family. It's not about the money. It's about like where I am in my life. And I can't keep doing this with kids on the way. We had ELP on the show, and he's talking about like, hey, contract time is coming up, and we're going to have a conversation about this even before Wrestle Kingdom came in. You had Clark Connors and a couple of people go, hey, contract time. Everybody's talking about like, hey, like putting up the blinders, putting up the light signals, like, hey, time to pay me a little bit more. And they probably can, with Okada being gone, but it's also a diminished roster, and you have to prove your worth. If you want to get paid more next year, you have to deliver upon this year. It is an arrangement. And, this is an opportunity for a lot of people to step up this year. An absolute there is a void at the top. And if you're hungry and you're good, this is your window.
And if you are somebody who hasn't quite made it to WWE or AEW yet, then the idea of maybe you're in Australia, maybe you're in Rev Pro, maybe you're in some of these smaller companies in the United States, the idea of being a featured gaijin in New Japan is clearly a way to get noticed. I mean, they all know as well that that every leader of Bullet Club's been signed, so they know the people are looking. They know the people are looking, so they'll get talent. It's just a matter of they're going to have to find some, they're just not going to be able to compete with, but they never have. Finn Balor left, Kenny Omega left. They all left because American companies were willing to pay them more. That's just how it goes on there. So
who on the New Japan roster in 2030 is going to be the guy we're talking about, like John Moxley? Is it going to be Gabe Kidd? Is it going to be Bolton Oleg? Is it going to be some guy that we don't even know of that is just the new standard bearer, this guy coming in from another promotion, or this guy that's already been in the promotion and has basically just redefined themselves as this master, like North American brawler that comes across, or European brawler that comes across? Like, who's going to be that guy that sits here? We don't have any idea. When it was 2018 and John Moxley showed up, 2019, and John Moxley showed up in New Japan Pro Wrestling for the first time, like the landscape of what it looks like now, we kind of had an inkling, but not nearly as much as you'd think we would 6 years ago. So 6 years from now, we're going to be in a completely different landscape. And it's just, that's the cycle of pro wrestling.
Like New Japan has survived things like this before. At one point, in 1 month, Anderson and Gallows left. That was one of their top tag teams. Guerrillas of Destiny basically took their spot as the top heel perennial tag team contenders after that. That was Anderson and Gallows. They were a big deal in New Japan. AJ Styles left. He was the leader of Bullet Club and a world champion. Nakamura left all within in January of that year. And they found new guys. They just did. And that's part of the cycle there. And Colin mentions that they should have signed Nakajima. I'm dismayed they didn't. We don't know what happened there, if they tried, if they didn't try, or anything like that. I'd like to see him there too. If you have
the idea that Nakajima went straight to the top of one of those smaller promotions rather than just being in the mix at the mid card in New Japan. I get it. I get why he went and did that instead at All Japan.
Maybe so. Yeah. And I mean, the All Japan guy I'd want is Kento Miyahara anyway, but good luck getting him. That would be the guy I'd want. So I was looking back. So we were talking about the past leaders of the Bullet Club. I was looking back at this time of year, the new beginning when I'll take it literally. What were the new beginnings of past years? So I decided to look back a few years, went 5 years, 10 years. And then I look further back. You want to know where we were in this time a few years ago? Because it's an interesting spot.
Yeah. Let's see if I remember if we walk this through.
5 years ago was 2019. Now, there were two different things going on then. They had the New Beginning tour, just like we have now. They were also doing a New Beginning in the USA during this period. Did 4 shows over here. And in New Beginning in the USA was in Charlotte, North Carolina on this date 5 years ago. Wow. The opening match, listen to this one. Carl Fredericks, who is now Eddie Thorpe in NXT, and Clark Connors went to a 10-minute draw in the opening match right there. There was a Great Okan American debut match where he defeated Tracer X. Colt Cabana and John Schuyler beat Lance Archer and Shane Taylor. This is only 5 years ago, but this feels like forever ago.
I don't even remember this card.
Villain Enterprises, Marty Skrull and Brody King defeated Jeff Cobb and Jonathan Gresham. So obviously still
on World?
I don't think so. I feel like I would have seen it if I did. Special match, Davey Boy Smith defeated Alex Coughlin. And then Lifeblood, which was David Finlay and Tracy Williams, beat Chuck Taylor and Rocky Romero.
Lifeblood, that was that crap ROH faction that they had with maybe Taven. Taven was in it.
Wow, there you go. And then the main event in Charlotte was the U.S. title on the line. Juice Robinson defeated Beretta in 27 minutes, 29 seconds. They went long.
So this was after Juice Robinson beat Jay White for it at the Cow Palace.
Yeah, exactly. So then at the same time, now the New Beginning in Sapporo was going on over in Japan, different date. It was on the 4th. They drew 4,868. So there were 2 days, just like this year, except it was February 4th and 5th. So a little earlier in the month. But listen to these attendances here, Jeremy. On night 1 of that, 4,868 was the attendance. On night 2, 6,089. So 2019, New Japan pretty hot. The opening match, by the way, at the New Beginning in Sapporo, Ren Narita and beat Yuya Uemura. So there you go.
Old is new again.
Second match, I'm not going to read out the entire card, just going to hit the highlights. But Manabu Nakanishi and Toa Henare defeated Ayato Yoshida. There's a young guy. He wasn't necessarily just like a New Japan Dojo young lion, but a guy, and Shota Umino. And Yoshida is still wrestling, but for small promotions around Japan. He just did a little bit of a run in New Japan where he was basically booked like a young lion there. Trying to see what else was interesting on this one. Oh, yeah. We had special match. Minoru Suzuki defeated Sanada. Evil got his win over Zack Sabre Jr. I remember the build-up to this is that Zack this is when we had babyface Evil with LIJ, right? And Zack was the jerk with Suzuki-gun, and Evil couldn't get over the hump. And I remember just sitting there, man, I really, it feels so weird. Man, I really hope Evil gets his win over Zack finally. Like, I was really rooting for Evil to win, and he did. He got the win over Zack in Sapporo, but that was actually a big deal. Like, Evil couldn't be, it was his bogeyman. He could not get over the hump of Zack Sabre Jr.
Was that the year House of Torture formed, or was it the year after?
No, it was later than that. Yeah, well, 2019, I think it was. Was that? I think it was in 20. Was that? Yeah, I guess so. A little bit later than that. Yeah,
because he beat Evil beat Naito for it, and
was that in 2019?
Yeah, at this point, Hiroshi Tanahashi had the belt, right?
I'm double checking now. Believe so, because Naito was the Intercontinental Champion at this point.
Right. So Hiroshi Tanahashi beat Kenny Omega because this was right when AEW was forming, and then Omega wasn't even at New Year Dash. And then Tanahashi immediately lost it to Jay White at the end of the New Beginning tour.
There you go. Okay. There you go. So yeah,
I remember from memory.
Special match, by the way, in Sapporo. Jay White and Bad Luck Fale defeated Okada and Tanahashi. This is when the Dream Team didn't work. Remember how Okada and Hiroshi Tanahashi would team up and then they would lose. Like the whole Dream Team thing would fail fairly frequently. It was a weird story.
Was this Balloon Okada?
2019. Maybe it was. Like, it was
a weird year for New Japan.
Very, very weird year. Second night.
So for people who don't know, Balloon Okada was a phase in Okada's career where he lost the title and he decided to bring a pile of balloons, like helium balloons, as part of his ring entrance. And he was he was going through an existential crisis is what it appeared to be, but they were just like, oh, this is Okada just trying something out. Kind of like he tried out the money clip. Not everything was a winner with Okada.
Well, he did the whole thing with, like, he lost the title and then he lost to Jay White at Wrestle Kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And not in a particularly featured singles match. It was kind of in the middle of the card almost, maybe third or fourth from the top, which was unusual for Okada at the time. So he was going through his crisis. Dunson says that he went back to being the Rainmaker in 2019. So Balloon Okada only lasted about I don't know,
a few months. So if he got back to the later on in the year before he got into the G1 and probably won the G1 for one of several years of his run, that makes a lot of sense.
So day 2, we had Toa Henare defeated Yota Tsuji, Young Lion Yota Tsuji at that point. Tenzan and Ren Narita defeated Takashi Iizuka and Taka Michinoku by DQ. That was when Iizuka was getting DQ'd all over the place. What else was on this one? Drew Huge, even though there aren't the same the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team titles were on the line in this one. That would be Bushi and Shingo Takagi. Shingo still booked as a junior heavyweight. They defeated Kanemaru and Desperado, 18 minutes and 4 seconds to defend their junior tag team titles. IWGP Heavyweight Tag Team title match was Evil and Sonata as the tag team champions. They defeated Suzuki and Zack Sabre Jr. in that one to defend their titles.
Actually probably a pretty decent match.
Probably, almost certainly was. And then the main event, IWGP Intercontinental title in 21 minutes and 31 seconds, Naito defeated Taichi. So that was it. There you go. And they were just doing things like Okada. This had to have been Balloon Okada because it was Jay White, Fale, and Chase Owens beating Tanahashi, Okada, and Yoshihashi underneath. In the fifth match out of 8. Yeah. So there you go. So in 2014 and 2012, there weren't any major shows on This Week in History. So I wanted to go back a little bit, but they were leading up to bigger New Beginning shows that we'll talk about in the future. But I wanted to go back, Jeremy, to the last, since Okada is on the mind, right? Mm-hmm. The last time Okada wasn't a factor in New Japan was 2011. So I decided to go back and look at what was going on in 2011. So the year before Okada's on excursion at this point. He's over there suffering in TNA as
Okado or whatever.
Kato. Named after a bad stereotype from an American television show. The tour was called New Japanism. It was called New Japanism. And some interesting names here in this one.
Got a real brain trust putting those names together.
Yeah. Opening match, King Fale. Not yet Bad Luck Fale. He defeated Kyosuke Mikami, who's now El Desperado. We also had, what else? Okay, Yujiro Takahashi and Tetsuya Naito. So their tag team, Yujiro hadn't turned on him yet. Of course, Bullet Club wasn't created until 2012. So this is pre-Bullet Club. Takahashi and Naito, the team, they defeated Hirooki Goto and Tama Tonga in a match there. We also had Yuji Nagata, Wataru Inoue, that's a name from the past, Prince Devitt, so Finn Balor, and Ryusuke Taguchi. So that was when Devitt and Taguchi were one of the best junior heavyweight tag teams out there. They defeated Chaos, Shinsuke Nakamura, Toru Yano, Gedo, and Jado in the semi-main.
Probably a pretty fun match.
The final, the main event, that one was an interesting matchup here. Listen to this one. This was Hiroshi Tanahashi, Togi Makabe, and Tomoaki Honma defeated Kojima-gun, Satoshi Kojima, Nosawa Rongai, another name from the past, and Taichi, pre-Suzuki-gun Taichi. So there you have that one. That was New Japanism on this week back in 2011. So that was what was going on in New Japan this time of year before Okada. So
what were you doing in 2011? What was your life like?
I was still living in very southern Indiana at that point, basically in the Louisville metro area. And I was working there for I'd already left UPS. So I was working down there for census. I was Census Bureau. I was working for the Census Bureau then.
There you go.
But that was in around the Louisville metro area. That was before I moved to Texas. Good grief. What was I thinking?
You were thinking
I was thinking I need to move to Texas.
I don't know.
I would have been in the process of starting to look for what became my job down here. And eventually I was trying to get a job down here for a while. And I realized that they would see a Louisville or, Southern Indiana address and not take me seriously. So I just packed my stuff and moved to Austin. I didn't have a job and I just moved down here and I had an Austin address, and then boom, I started getting interviews. It's like, oh, okay, this person's actually here. So that worked, but it took a while to work up the guts to that.
I was in a pretty bad place 13 years ago, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Is that right?
I was going through a pretty bad divorce, but I was gainfully employed. Everything was fine. Just the personal things were just like bad. I dove into wrestling. I tried to use it as like an escape, comic book, wrestling, the Marvel movies, basically trying to avoid any type of human interaction that I could with other people. And then, 13 years later, figured it out, got my life back together, and here we are. I would definitely say that both New Japan and us are in a better place now than we were 11 years ago.
I would definitely agree with you on that one. So much better place now. I've got a really great partner. I'm in a much better city, and I'm pretty happy down here. So
I think you're talking about your personal life partner, but I'm going to take it as a compliment if you meant me as your partner in this podcast.
I'm sitting here talking to one of my best friends about New Japan Pro Wrestling. Things are so much better. This is great.
Can you believe that we're on episode 88 of this thing, and before the end of this summer, we're going to have 100 episodes of this thing in the can?
That seems incredible. Incredible. So
plug it away, 90 minutes at a time.
Yeah, it really is amazing. And we're just going to keep on going through all of this time in New Japan. And again, this feels like an area where New Japan is getting through these new beginning shows with the bare threads of the original plan, right before they realized they were losing Okada and Tama Tonga. And because I really feel like probably on New Year's Day, if you had asked the New Japan office, are you losing either one of those guys? They would probably say no.
Tom Billy said, we feel good that they're sticking around.
They knew Ospreay was going. We knew that one. But, they say, yeah, we're losing Will. That's a bummer. But at least we have Okada. But, so I feel like these new beginning shows are just kind of a way to get through this little period. And then there's going to be an actual new beginning. When these guys are actually gone from I guess Tama Tonga is gone from the company. But by then, Will be totally gone. Okada will be totally gone. We really will have a new beginning as we move toward the New Japan Cup on into G1 season, everything else. And it's an exciting time, and we're going to be here each and every week to walk through it and see what happens, because I just have a feeling we're going to be looking at a very different New Japan in 6 months than the one we're looking at
now.
Are
we are in the calm before the storm. And before the 100th episode that we just previously talked about, I'm going to say, if I give you an over-under of 3 what the fuck moments before the 100th episode that happens on New Japan programming, I'm going to take the over on that one.
Yeah, I would take the over on 3. Yeah, I would too. I think there's going to be some strange stuff going on here. And I think some of it, I think we're going to be thrilled at. And if I know New Japan, there's going to be a couple things where we're like, oh, come on, guys. There's going to be a little bit of that in there too.
Did you have to do that? Is that really the call?
Don't be so conservative, guys. Go for it. Let's see some new stuff. Anyway, we'll find out how all this goes. Point being, 88 episodes. Could not have done it without the people that watch and listen, and wouldn't have wanted to do it without the people that are watching and listening. So we've heard from Colin, Dunstan.
Thank you to the guests. Thank you to everybody.
Yeah, for the folks that join us live and for the people that listen later or watch later, we're so grateful. We really enjoy doing this show. It's it's the highlight of the week for us each and every time. And it's because we get to do that for you and interact with all of you. And we really appreciate it. So thanks for letting us do this for 88 episodes and many more to come. We're very grateful.
I echo all those sentiments. I got nothing more to add. Thank you to the guests. Thank you to the people who watched the show. Thank you for the feedback. Yeah, Steven, take us home. Let's get out of here in 90.
Next week, we will be talking about those Cork and Hall shows and even more about that big Osaka event. So for Jeremy Finestone, I'm Steven Conway. Thanks for watching and listening to Speaking of Strong Style. We'll talk to you again very soon.